Tonight, on First at 9 this Thursday, the 16th of October 2025. Kathmandu thriller. Ishara Sewandi, key suspect in the Ganemula Sanjeeva murder, reveals details of her escape to law enforcement authorities. Aimless wanderers. More than 5,000 government entities operating without defined mandates, the Deputy Minister of Finance and Planning reveals. Black gold investment. Sinopec Vice President meets Foreign Minister to address concerns impeding the launch of a major oil refinery investment in Sri Lanka. Stay the course. Stay on the current reform path to gain more benefits, IMF advises Sri Lanka. Fiscal consolidation and viability of SOEs highlighted as key focuses to mitigate contingent risks of the budget.
Kalin baby soap rupial 90කට. Kalin baby podi හැමෝටමයි.
Homelands Expo 2025 Property Investment Forum and Exhibition. Join us on 11th October, Hilton, Colombo, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Call 0710 111 444.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Adrisinghe joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Brought to you by the only Sri Lankan media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms, recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people. On your top story tonight, attorney at law Gunaratna Wanninayaka, who stoked controversy on social media during a verbal confrontation with a police constable deployed at the Mount Lavinia Magistrates Court, reported to the Western Province South Crimes Division to provide an official statement. Meanwhile, the Court of Appeal fixed a writ petition filed by Wanninayaka seeking an order preventing his arrest for hearing on the 10th of November.
A police constable deployed at the Mount Lavinia Magistrates Court premises was arrested, held in remand custody and later released on bail for allegedly assaulting an attorney at law practicing in the chambers of Senior Counsel Gunaratna Wanninayaka. In the immediate aftermath of the controversy, the police also launched an investigation into attorney-at-law Gunaratna Wanninayaka for allegedly obstructing the constable's duties. Wanninayaka is also alleged to have used obscene language when addressing the constable in question. Although the authorities attempted to record a statement from Wanninayaka on the incident, he evaded the authorities fearing arrest and later invoked the writ jurisdiction of the Court of Appeal, seeking an order preventing his arrest. Accordingly, the writ petition filed as such was taken up for consideration yesterday by a bench comprising Justice Rohantha Abesurya, the President of the Court of Appeal, and Justice Priyantha Fernando. Considering submissions made by all parties, the Court of Appeal opined that Wanninayaka must first appear before the Mount Lavinia Magistrates Court before seeking release from superior courts. Subsequently, Wanninayaka appeared before the Mount Lavinia Magistrates Court and was later released on two sureties of 500,000 rupees each. Meanwhile, the writ petition filed by Wanninayaka with the Court of Appeal was recalled today. President's counsel Faiz Mustafa, representing Wanninayaka at the Court of Appeal, pledged to inform the Court of Appeal on whether his client intends to continue the writ application filed. To that, President's counsel Mustafa moved court to grant further time. Considering the request, the Court of Appeal fixed the petition to be recalled on the 10th of November. Meanwhile, attorney Wanninayaka arrived at the Western Province South Crime Division today to provide a statement concerning the allegations levelled against him. Statement recorded at the Western Province South Crime Division lasted over 3 hours. Meanwhile, former Executive Director of the State Engineering Corporation, Nilu Dilhara Vijayadasa, was arrested by officials of the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption this morning. The arrest was made in connection to corruption charges. The suspect is alleged to have caused a 1.6 million rupee financial loss to the State Engineering Corporation by deploying employees and resources for renovations at Sirikota, the UNP headquarters, in 2019, deviating from the established procedure. The suspect's authorization as such is purported to have generated undue gains to the United National Party. The suspect was produced before the Colombo Magistrates Court and was later released on two surety bonds of 1 million rupees each. The case is scheduled to be taken up again on December 9th.
Ishara Sewandi, a key suspect arrested in connection with the murder of Ganemula Sanjeeva, has shed light on her escape to Nepal and evasion of arrest. The suspect claims that she hid in Matugama and Middaniya before fleeing to Nepal through India. During interrogations, Sewandi shared leads on several other suspects linked to notorious underworld Don Kehilbadra Padme, who were also arrested by the authorities in Nepal.
A key fugitive suspect wanted in connection with the murder of notorious underworld Don Ganemulla Sanjeeva was snapped in Nepal during a joint operation conducted by Sri Lanka's Criminal Investigation Department and the Nepal police. The suspect, named Ishara Sewandi, along with 5 other arrestees, were extradited to Sri Lanka last night aboard a Sri Lankan Airlines flight. The arrests and the extradition were conducted successfully by a team of police officers led by Assistant Superintendent of Police Rohan Olugala. The flight carrying the suspects touched down at the Bandaranaike International Airport at 6:52 p.m. yesterday. Subsequently, the 6 suspects were handed over to several separate police precincts for further investigations. Accordingly, Ishara Sewandi, Takshi alias Duplicate Ishara, Kennedy Bastian Pillai alias J.K. Bai, and Jaffna Suresh were handed over to the Colombo Crime Division. Kampaha Baba, a key leader of notorious criminal Kehilbadra Padme's gang, was handed over to the Western Province North Crime Division, while the Western Province South Crime Division took custody of the other arrested suspect, Nugegoda Babi. According to reports, ASP Rohan Olugala and police officer Gihan Pereira departed the country for Nepal on the 10th of October. Acting ambassador to Nepal, Chamira Munasinghe, facilitated the coordination between the Sri Lankan police team and the Nepalese law enforcement authorities. With the assistance from a third party, the CID first arrested J.K. Bai. During interrogations, J.K. Bai rejected claims of being affiliated with Ishara Sewandi. Despite the suspect's refusal to acknowledge any affiliation, the authorities managed to uncover Ishara Sewandi's contact number from the suspect. Acting upon the uncovered lead, the police identified Ishara's whereabouts. Subsequently, the team deployed from Sri Lanka staked out Sewandi's hideout from a house located 5 blocks away. Preliminary investigations launched by the Nepal police have uncovered that an Indian named Thamilani was residing in the house, which served as Sewandi's hideout. However, further investigations revealed that the occupant of the house was in fact Ishara Sewandi, with Thamilani being the cover name used to evade the authorities. Upon subsequent confirmation of the uncovered leads, the law enforcement authorities in Nepal raided the house in question and nabbed Ishara Sewandi. During questioning, Ishara revealed that she concealed herself at a residence in Matugama for about a month after Ganemulla Sanjeeva's murder. Thereafter, Sewandi claims she moved to Middaniya, acting on Kehilbadra Padme's instructions. According to reports, aiding Sewandi's 1-month-long stay in Middaniya was Bako Saman, a known criminal with links to Kehilbadra Padme's gang. Later, Sewandi moved to Jaffna for 3 days, where she sought J.K. Bai's assistance to flee to India. Ishara stayed in India for 2 weeks before fleeing to Nepal, using a forged Indian NIC under the name Thamilani. During further interrogations, Ishara Sewandi revealed whereabouts of 4 other suspects, leading to the arrests of Kampaha Baba, Nugegoda Babi, Jaffna Suresh, and a woman identified as Takshi, alias Duplicate Ishara. Jaffna Suresh and Takshi arrived in Nepal 2 weeks prior to Kehilbadra Padme's arrest. All 6 of the arrestees reportedly resided in the same residence in Nepal before they parted ways following Padme's arrest. Investigations also revealed an attempt to sneak Ishara Sewandi into Europe. The plot involved the forging of documents including Takshi's personal information. In the meantime, during interrogations by the Western Province South Crime Division, Nugegoda Babi revealed that he was called to India several months ago by Padme along with Gampaha Baba. The suspects have made their way to India with the assistance of Bako Saman. Nugegoda Babi fled to Dubai in 2019 after murdering an individual in Kohwala and was deported from Dubai in July last year. The police claim that the suspect has been detained for 72 hours for questioning.
යාඩියා T5 ස්කූටරයක් සමග අඟල් 32 LED TV එකක් නොමිලේ.
The World Education Fair 2025's entrance free. Register now.
In other news, Prime Minister Dr. Haruni Amarasuriya, currently on her first official visit to India, met with Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar in New Delhi today. The Prime Minister is also scheduled to meet with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi during her official visit and is expected to also deliver the keynote speech at the NDTV World Summit 2025 in India tomorrow.
Prime Minister Dr. Haruni Amarasuriya left Sri Lanka last night for her maiden visit to India. Upon her arrival in New Delhi, the Sri Lankan Premier was welcomed by the High Commissioner of Sri Lanka to India, Mahishini Kolonne, along with several senior Indian officials and representatives from the Sri Lankan High Commission in New Delhi. During her first official visit to India, Prime Minister Dr. Amarasuriya met with the Minister of External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, in New Delhi. The duo held discussions focused on collaboration in manufacturing, infrastructure, education and knowledge services, while also expressing Sri Lanka's interest in further strengthening bilateral trade. Prime Minister Dr. Amarasuriya is also scheduled to hold several high-level meetings, including one with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In the meantime, Dr. Amarasuriya is set to deliver the keynote address at the NDTV World Summit 2025 tomorrow, organized jointly by NDTV and the Chintan Research Foundation. The two-day summit will bring together an extraordinary gathering of minds, heads of state, cultural icons, business leaders, innovators and voices of moral imagination to engage in a new kind of dialogue. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Dr. Amarasuriya also visited her alma mater, the Hindu College of Delhi University today, where she was welcomed with a formal ceremony.
It is a deep personal joy and a profound honor to stand before you today at Hindu College. When I walked through the gates of this college as a young student from Sri Lanka in 1991, I carried with me a mixture of dreams, uncertainty, hopes, questions, and also more than a little nervousness. As I entered the college through the very same gates today, over 3 decades later, I was filled with nostalgia and also admiration. Now, as Prime Minister, I carry with me the lessons of every classroom, every research project, every conversation with my teachers, my colleagues, and I would say especially my own students who dared to dream of a better world.
Additionally, the Sri Lankan Prime Minister is scheduled to visit the Indian Institute of Technology in New Delhi and the Government of India's premier policy think tank, Niti Aayog. According to a statement issued by the Prime Minister's media division, Dr. Amarasuriya is expected to participate in a business program focused on strengthening trade and investment relations between Sri Lanka and India.
Now, Deputy Minister of Finance and Planning Dr. Anil Jayante reveals that more than 5,000 entities affiliated to the government ministries and bodies operate without specific mandates. The Deputy Minister vows to address issues grappling the public service despite how challenging they may seem.
An event titled Enabling Sri Lanka's Market Bond Issuance in Indian Currency, Pathways, Policies and Preparedness, organized by the Indo-Sri Lanka Chamber of Commerce and Industry, was held recently at the Bandaranayake International Convention Centre in Colombo. The session was chaired by the Minister of Labour and Deputy Minister of Finance and Planning, Dr. Anil Jayante.
We need to have very strong and efficient public service. As of now, there are lots of issues. In some areas, some structural changes are needed. So we are addressing them. We may not be able to solve all these problems within a short period of time, but we are moving ahead with all those challenges. So we look at these SOEs first. Now we came to know there are more than 5,000 different entities are just lying and under different ministries and departments without having any specific tasks. They have a name tag, but in a way it has become a big burden to the general public as well. Now we are collecting information, analyzing and trying to do a structural change to do the right thing, to have an efficient public sector, the public service, to help facilitate investors and provide the required service for the general public. In that regard, we give the priority to shorten the time taken for such as taking licenses and other, especially when investment comes. Time period taken to initiate the businesses is too long. We are working on this single window concept. We plan to launch it by the end of this year. Foreign direct investment, especially between India and Sri Lanka. In pursuit of doing that, technology play a key role. Now we are working with India as well to bring the required expertise to establish the required digital infrastructure. That digital infrastructure could solve lots of problems, including the fighting against the corruption as well.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa claims that the government has turned its back on the farming community despite lofty promises made when the incumbent government was serving in the opposition. He made these remarks while addressing a public meeting in Madiragiriya today.
Another event under the opposition leaders' mobile service initiative took place today in Madiragiriya, Polonnaruwa, chaired by opposition leader Sajith Premadasa. I vow to fix the price of all fertilizers at 5,000 rupees. However, the farming community was satisfied with the 50,000 rupee disbursement handed out per 2 hectares. I would like to ask all farmers here if that disbursement of 50,000 rupees is made on time. On certain occasions, we hear that the disbursement is made only after the harvest is reaped. Our goal has always been to protect the farming community. Whenever the harvest is procured, it is done so at extremely low prices. When incumbent ministers were in the opposition, they pledged a guaranteed price of 150 rupees per kilo of rice to gain votes. They would have done anything to secure votes. I ask those who are genuinely unhappy to raise your hands. We need to express this dissatisfaction to the country's leaders. We might not be able to address all national concerns through a provincial council election. However, if you vest some power in us, I vow to ensure a better life for Sri Lanka's farming community.
The United National Party announced that it has appointed a 3-member committee with the Samaga Jana Balawegaya comprising UNP's Deputy Leader Ruwan Wijewardena, General Secretary Thalatha Attukodla and President's Counsel Ronald C. Pereira. The United National Party also reiterates its position that all political parties should come together on one platform to protect Sri Lanka's democratic multi-party system. With that, here's a look at some thoughts shared in the political arena today with the provincial council elections around the corner.
The Sarvajana Balaya believes that provincial councils are not necessary for this country. What happens through provincial councils is merely a significant waste of wealth. The administrative and other powers vested in provincial councils can be effectively implemented through local government institutions. The political movement that was once against provincial councils is now part of the government. They must either abolish provincial councils or hold elections without further delay. An act must first be passed in Parliament to hold provincial council elections. However, as a government, we will take the necessary steps to hold the polls at the appropriate time. Many ministers have expressed their views on the matter and stated that the essential legal framework required for the provincial council elections will be finalized in Parliament. Even though they say that these elections will be held, the government has no real intention of doing so. The governing party lost all cooperative elections held recently. They know that they will be defeated in any upcoming election. The governing party lost 2.3 million votes during the local government election. Hence, they are aware that their vote bank has been reduced by nearly half. As a government, we have decided that the provincial council elections will be held. We will secure victory in all 9 provinces. As a party, we are ready to face any election. Even though most parties secure northern votes, former President Mahinda Rajapaksa was the leader who paved the way for a provincial council to be set up in the north. Others merely travel to the north to secure votes and then proceed to remain silent thereafter. However, the government that once promised to fulfill the wishes of the people now neglects its promises and continues to crush their hopes.
Now, a report by Human Rights Watch claims that Sri Lanka's tax policies played a driving role in the country's devastating 2022 economic crisis and contributed to chronic underfunding of education and other public services. According to the report, the organization further urged the current government to reform a tax system that favors companies and the wealthy, while stressing the need for a UN tax treaty to promote fair, human rights-based international tax rules.
In 2022, An unprecedented national economic meltdown prompted widespread protests across Sri Lanka, culminating in the resignation of then-President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. As Sri Lanka gradually regains its economic footing, through a comprehensive report, the Human Rights Watch describes how Sri Lanka's successive governments have adopted policies that resulted in inadequate revenues, contributing not only Sri Lanka defaulting on its debt, but also to a decades-long decline in public education spending as a share of gross domestic product to among the lowest in the world. The report, titled Tax Giveaways, Struggling Schools, How Low Taxes Drove Sri Lanka's Economic Crisis and Squandered Its Education, points out that successive governments prioritizing economic liberalization since the late 1970s consistently favored tax cuts for companies and wealthy individuals while failing to build a progressive tax system capable of generating enough revenue for essential public services. According to the authors of the report, tax cuts introduced in 2019 under former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa further worsened fiscal shortfalls. As a result, Human Rights Watch finds these policy failures to have infringed upon the right to education. Sri Lanka's education spending dropped from between 3 and 5% of GDP in the 2 decades following independence, a time when the country was an education leader among post-colonial nations, to just 1.5% of GDP in 2022, among the lowest in the world. The report notes that schools in Sri Lanka now charge fees for basic resources, leaving many low-income families struggling. Furthermore, Human Rights Watch also highlights that in 2022, corporate tax exemptions alone cost the government 56% of total revenue, nearly 3 times the education budget, while low-income taxes force reliance on regressive indirect taxes like the value-added tax. The Human Rights Watch urges the current government to reform the tax system, eliminate costly exemptions, and adopt progressive measures such as a wealth tax. It also calls for international cooperation, including a UN tax treaty, to prevent global tax competition from undermining public revenue.
Welcome back. Now in your business news, Sri Lanka's Purchasing Managers Index for September 2025 indicated slower growth in both the manufacturing and service sectors. According to the latest report issued by the central bank, the manufacturing PMI stood at 55.4 in September, slightly up from 55.2 in August. Meanwhile, the services PMI recorded 58.7, showing a notable decline from 68.9 in August. In the manufacturing sector, all sub-indices except employment remained above the neutral threshold during the month. The sector remains optimistic about the next 3 months, reflecting expectations of stronger year-end seasonal demand. The expansion in the services PMI was mainly driven by business activities in the wholesale and retail trade sectors. In addition, financial service activities continued to improve, supported by an increase in lending. Expectations for business activities over the next 3 months remain positive, bolstered by favorable macroeconomic conditions, rising tourist arrivals, and the anticipated boost from the upcoming festive season. In other business news, Sri Lanka's Foreign Minister Vijitha Herath met with Sinopec Vice President Liu Liangong to address remaining issues regarding the launch of a major oil refinery investment in Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, a delegation of leading US investors met with Minister Herath in Colombo to assess Sri Lanka's improving investment climate and explore new opportunities under the current government's economic reform agenda.
Discussions with the Sinopec vice chairman mainly focused on the progress of the $3.7 billion oil refinery project in Hambantota. The Sinopec vice chairman commended the government's efforts in resolving long-standing issues which paved the way for signing the project agreement earlier this year to produce up to 200,000 barrels per day. He assured that Sinopec is ready to begin the project without delay, highlighting its significance for both nations. Minister Herath, meanwhile, pledged to address any remaining challenges to ensure the project's swift implementation. Meanwhile, a group of leading US investors, including Walter Mead from the Hudson Institute's Strategy Office, met with Foreign Minister Vijitha Herath in Colombo. The visit aimed to assess Sri Lanka's improving investment climate and explore new opportunities under the government's economic reform agenda. Minister Herath reaffirmed the government's commitment to creating an investor-friendly environment, assuring that foreign investors can operate in Sri Lanka with confidence. He also revealed plans to introduce new legislation in Parliament soon to further safeguard and promote investments.
The Colombo Stock Exchange closed in positive territory today as a result of price gains in counters such as Hemers Holdings, Sampath Bank and Vidul Lanka. The benchmark ASPI gained 0.56% to close at 22,416.15, while the more liquid S&P Sri Lanka 20 increased by 0.45% to end the day at 6,226.64. Market turnover was 8.6 billion rupees. Furthermore, foreign investors closed as net sellers with foreign sales worth 1.7 billion rupees. Welcome back. Now, the International Monetary Fund says Sri Lanka's economy is growing strongly following the implementation of the IMF Extended Fund Facility Program after the debt crisis. Answering a question by Derana during a press briefing held alongside the IMF World Bank annual meetings, IMF officials urged Sri Lanka to stay on course to gain further benefits moving forward. We now have Indivari Amuatha reporting from the International Monetary Fund headquarters in Washington, D.C.
It's a busy morning here in Washington, D.C. at the IMF headquarters where all the meetings, important meetings between finance ministers, central bank governors are taking place. Of course, yesterday the sovereign debt roundtable meeting was held with global finance leaders and central bankers participating. We did see that small economies in debt distress being a focus of the discussions among creditor nations, official and bilateral creditor nations, Paris Club creditor nations as well. Today we have key press conferences by the managing director of the IMF, who warns of uncertainty yet resilience, and says that many countries not retaliating to US tariffs will bolster economic growth, global growth. And later we did have IMF Asia Pacific Director Krishna Srinivasan talking about Asia's outlook, which is fastest growing, but yet vulnerabilities persist. And for Sri Lanka, he said, stay the course.
During the briefing on the global policy agenda, IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva claimed that the global economy is better than feared, however, warned that the medium-term growth prospects still remain weak due to heightened global uncertainties. The IMF urges nations to have better public safety nets as the global economy is still excessively unbalanced.
When we gathered here 6 months ago at our spring meetings, there was a lot of anxiety about the state of the global economy. Then we predicted a considerable slowdown in growth, but no recession. 6 months on, where do we stand? In a nutshell, better than feared, but worse than needed. So the question is, why has the global economy shown such resilience in the face of uncertainty and profound transformations in geopolitics? I can give you two core reasons. Since the global financial crisis, many countries, especially emerging markets, have pursued sound policies. They have strengthened their institutions. They have strengthened their frameworks. This investment is paying off, and if I may say, stay the course. Second, the adaptability of the private sector, which has shown agility in import front-loading, in supply chain strengthening, in just navigating uncertainty, is quite remarkable. But even so, the outlook we have is underwhelming. Medium-term growth prospects remain weak. Public debt is near record highs and continues to climb. And the global economy is excessively imbalanced. The forces of change are making the global economy less predictable, and it is impacting people. The largest economy in the world has chosen to use tariffs as an instrument in relations with partners. Here is the interesting fact today. The rest of the world has not followed. So far, out of 191 members of the IMF, we have seen only 3 moving more forcefully on tariffs. Of course, first the United States, China, and to a certain degree, although there have been significant adjustments, Canada. 188 countries said thank you, but not thank you. We prefer to continue to trade on most favored nation rules. And we are encouraging countries to please do that, because unless you are very large, relatively close economy, and India is not, it's an open economy, it doesn't work well for you.
Later, the Director of Asia and Pacific Department of the IMF, Krishna Srinivasan, convened a press briefing and pointed out that policy uncertainty remains high in the region, however, expects the region's economic growth to be around 4.5% in 2025 and moderate to 4.1% in 2026.
Economic activity in the Asia-Pacific is holding up better than expected in April, despite the region bearing the brunt of US tariffs and policy uncertainty remaining high. We project the region to grow by 4.5% in 2025 and moderate to 4.1% in 2026. Inflation is expected to remain muted in most countries. The region is once again set to contribute the lion's share of global growth, about 60% both this year and in 2026. What explains this resilience? I would identify 3 key factors: strong exports, a tech boom, and accommodative macro policies reinforced by favorable financial conditions. The dust on tariffs has not yet settled. They could still increase. Similarly, risk premia and interest rates could rise again, especially if trade policy uncertainty or geopolitical tensions intensify. And a tightening of financial conditions could further increase debt-related vulnerabilities and stifle growth. Upgrading medium-term fiscal frameworks will be essential to prepare for future shocks and manage large long-term spending pressures. Countries also need to make growth more inclusive and resilient by rebalancing toward domestic demand through stronger social safety nets and, where needed, balance sheet repair. Concerted efforts to pursue reforms to boost trade and investment will help fuel durable growth for years to come. Our analysis in the forthcoming Rio, to be launched in Hong Kong next week, shows that deeper regional integration could yield sizable gains. Countries can cut non-tariff barriers, broaden and modernize trade agreements to cover services and digital trade, and ease FDI restrictions.
I am from Derana. I'm in Divari. There's ongoing debate in Sri Lanka about balancing fiscal consolidation with the need to protect growth and livelihoods while resolving the current debt distress as we approach 2028 debt servicing after the moratorium in 2022. So what's your advice here? And also, despite Asia Pacific remaining the fastest growing region, World Economic Outlook shows uneven recovery between advanced economies and smaller emerging markets. Do you see signs of similar vulnerabilities in other parts of the region? And also, the Sri Lankan economy, there was a distinct case. So what has the IMF learnt there and will implement in smaller economies and frontier markets like Sri Lanka?
In Diwari, I think the point I would make is, Sri Lanka has come a long way from where it was a few years ago. And so the advice we would say is stay the course. You've done the difficult part, continue with the reforms, and you'll see the benefits. You're already seeing the benefits, you'll continue to see more benefits. Thomas, you want to take those questions?
After deep recession during the crisis, Sri Lanka has now implemented a program, a homegrown reform program, and now benefits from very strong growth. 5% last year, we estimate 4.2% this year, and the next year sort of going towards potential of 3%. So the key advice at this point is really continue with program implementation, the full benefits of the program, and then growth will come and continue. For Sri Lanka, what is important is to continue on the way to stabilization, make sure that the institutional and other factors for macroeconomic stability are given. Fiscal consolidation plays a key role, and also ensuring viability of state-owned enterprises to mitigate or lower contingent risks to the budget will be key for these benefits to continue.
That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.